Okay, Jim McCullough from CIVIC. Welcome to Australian Musician.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.
Hey, what was your introduction to punk rock?
All right. Would you call Black Sabbath punk rock? This is the question.
I suppose you could.
So we were just talking then about being in Carrum. In fact, in Carrum, I was on my dad's knee. We were listening to Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath. I don't remember this happening, but this is what happened. And my dad was bouncing me up and down on his knee, singing a lot. He must have been reading the newspaper or something. Anyway, I fell off and I hit my face on the speaker, and it tore my face open like really bad on the speaker. And Dad said that it was so chaotic. He said that it was like War Pigs was playing in the background, and he said like me screaming with this like bloody face, and they had to get me into the car, get me to the hospital. I ended up getting like plastic surgery all up and down my face. You can't really see it anymore, but I've got a scar there. But that was not a bad intro to punk rock.
Very, very authentic. These days, of course, you're an international touring band. You've been to Europe and America. Is that something you ever thought you'd achieve when you started the band?
I was talking to my dad about this the other day. We were talking about, how you like measure success, and at what point do you stop and take a breath and go, oh, okay, I'm successful in what I'm doing or whatever. And it's like we never thought that we were gonna be able to travel the world off this thing, or never even thought that, to be honest, anyone would give two hoots about it in the early days. We were just doing it because we wanted to do it. And now, we're flying over to San Sebastian and, all parts of the world, and you rock up and there's, hundreds of people there that sing along to your songs. And it's so special. Like it's really something.
Yeah. You just got back from an American tour. How did that go down?
Yeah, it was fantastic. We've had like such a great response in America. I think America's our top listening market at the moment. Um, the way we did it was pretty crazy. Like we did like East Coast, drove through the center, and did a few weird shows in between. But we thought, why not? Like let's go to these kind of towns out in the middle of nowhere, even though not many people came, or they might not even know who we were. It's still important to do that, I think. And also just for us, it was our first time going there. So we were like, let's do this. Let's make this thing as big as we can.
Yeah. Of course, you've got a new album coming out on May 30 called Chrome Dipped. Um,
Correct.
you brought on board Kieran J. Callanan as producer.
Yeah.
What did you feel that Kieran could bring to the album?
Well, basically going into this album, we were kind of like, we wanted to flip things on their head a little bit. We wanted to like bring a sort of new life to it. Um, and we had a demo that we'd recorded in the studio, which we felt like that we'd taken the songs as far as they could go at that point. And we thought, you know, who could we bring in that's gonna, A, flip this thing on its head, push the boat out on it, and B, who's the most like unlikely person that we could bring into this thing? And Kieran's name came up in a mix of names, and I was just like, we got to get Kieran on board on this thing. And that's exactly what he did. He really flipped it on its head.
Did you give him free rein because he's a pretty out there guy?
Well, we did, and it was interesting because we went into this thing wanting it to sound big, if that's the word, or you have this concept in your head where you go, okay, we're going to go into this thing and we're going to make it the best thing we've made, and it's going to be bigger and it's going to be better, and blah blah blah. But that's not necessarily true. And what we found is that, in fact, taking things away was actually what made more sense and actually made the songs more interesting. And that was interesting with Kieran, because I thought he was going to come in with this he came in with a big personality, but in fact, he actually stripped everything back, which I did not expect that at all. And I think it really worked quite well.
Yeah. How did Kieran's style differ from Rob Younger?
Oh, definitely a bit louder. But yeah, in terms of style wise, I mean, Rob was quite happy to sort of, I think he trusted in us, we trusted in him, And, you know, the Rob Younger experience, I think, looking back, was probably just as much like we loved him just having him around, to be honest. You know what I mean? I feel like we had this joke where we felt like we were just kind of showing off our songs to him, that we've kind of like were a nod to his, you know, a homage to his sound. You know what I mean? Whereas with Kieran, it was like he really dissected these songs, and like, you know, we'd do a take or something and he'd be like, nah, do it again, or let's push it here, or let's take this out, or and that was, you know, there was some beauty that happened in those moments where you kind of got to really put your trust in this person. And even if you don't agree with it, you just got to go with it. And then, you know, what comes out the other side when it works, it's special, you know?
Yeah, and Kieran's a very techie sort of guy. He's had a techie background growing up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
I was just going to say, had you been playing these songs live before you recorded them?
We tried one or two songs live, just as like a kind of, you know, throw it in the mix in the live set to keep it fresh for us. But yeah, we recorded the demo, basically all the songs we recorded as a demo tape, before we went into the studio, just to kind of get an idea of like, I don't know, it's good to have like a bit of a sketch sometimes, you know. I respect bands a lot that can just go in. Like, I got a mate, Jamie from TNSW. He doesn't write any lyrics down. He just goes in and he'll just do like an album's worth of lyrics, like as he goes. I don't know how people do that, you know. I think, yeah, we like to have a bit of a sketch before we go in, you know, and do the final.
Yeah. 11 tracks on the album. Were there others who you were playing around with?
Yeah, there's always a couple that don't make the cut, you know, that either sometimes go on to the next record, or sometimes they just don't fit at all, and they just kind of end up living sort of, you know, in the WhatsApp group or on the, you know, phone recording or something. And like, I like this idea that maybe they might, you know, they don't make sense at the time, or they didn't get through, but they might rear their head later, or maybe they just won't ever get, you know, finished. And I think that that's not to say that, you know, they didn't resonate with us at the time and make the cut, but, you know, who knows, we might do a demo record down the track, and, you know, it might be somebody's favorite song. And I think I like that about it as well. You know, someone might find it, and that generally happens, right? Like, B-sides or demos get released and people go, you know what, I think that this song's actually really great, you know?
Yeah. Chrome Dipped is the title track. Was that an important decision, or was that kind of a throwaway thing, the album title?
Look, the title Chrome Dipped basically is this idea of like, we wanted the album started coming out, like, you know, we started talking about like songs and sounds and music kind of evoking like senses almost, do you know what I mean? Or like feelings and tastes and all this kind of stuff. And like, I like this word, like Chrome Dipped as an idea. Like, when I wrote the lyrics, it was like, obviously it paints this picture of this person, but it's kind of like hard and soft. Do you know what I mean? It's supposed to be like steel wool. It's like the hardest thing known to man is steel, and like wool is the softest thing. It's like stark contrast. You know, this kind of kept coming up throughout the whole record. It's like, even some of the songs, it's like, you know, Gull's Way, and then it goes into the Hog. It's like this very like sharp cut, you know what I mean? And even like getting Kieran on board, it's like, you know, it's one spectrum to the other. And this kind of thing kept popping up throughout the whole recording process. And yeah, I just think as a concept, it's just a beautiful thing to have this like hard, very hard, strong thing, but also can be very soft and beautiful as well, you know?
Yeah. So does that mean the track order was pretty important to you?
Sorry?
The track order, was that pretty important to you for this album?
Yeah, I think like it's funny with track orders, because like we worked it out. I think we like, or Kieran asked AI, and it was like, how many ways can you put 12, 11 tracks? And it was some ridiculous figure, like 550 million ways that you can put it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like, okay, you know, I remember like I'd come to the table with, I mean, I always wanted an intro because I always think that, you know, an intro is a good way to start a record. And traditionally we've done that. We did that with the last two. But this time around, we were just like, let's just get straight to it, you know? And like the track listing definitely, I feel like it's got that bounce between some songs where it's like, what is going on here? You know, like there's it's almost unsettling or something. It's almost like it confuses you. But I think that I've always been a big fan with track lists that kind of take you on this kind of journey a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like the full opening the record almost doesn't make sense to me, or it didn't at the time. But now the more I've listened to the record, it's like I think that it really does make sense, and I think it's a good opener and a good kind of first chapter of like where it leads. You know?
Yeah. Is there a song on the album that's closer to your heart than others?
Yeah. So look, Gull's Way is definitely probably the one that lyrically meant a lot to me. You know, like it was one that I kind of, it was like, okay, it was a conscious effort that, okay, this is the slow song, you know, what am I writing about here? You know, and I was like, definitely, you know, I was going through quite a hard time during the writing process with my mum. My mum was quite sick,
Yeah.
and in fact ended up losing her during the recording process. So I was writing a lot about that and kind of navigating how to write a song about that and how I wanted, you know, whether I wanted it to be like a, you know, a sad song or a happy song or something like that. And I found it really interesting writing, you know, I remember writing so many different versions of that song. And the one that I ended up with was the one where it was kind of like a homage to her or something, or like this, like, you know, I don't know. It doesn't even mention her name, but it's like, I write about like my idea of her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of political angst out there at the moment, and a lot of hardcore and punk music seems to be a bit of a resurgence if it ever went away. And social media, sorry, social media sort of amplifies that angst. Do you feel like the combination of the two has brought back the anger and the energy in music?
Look, I think there's obviously always, you know, there's always going to be shit going on in the world, and like you know, that's why we all, you know, we love punk, right? Because it stands up for, you know, there's 100 ways that you can, you know, find the power in it, whether it's political or it could be, you know, humanitarian rights or any of these kinds of things. But I think to answer that question, like I would like to believe that I think that it's always been relevant. I think that, like, you know, for me anyway, like it might seem like hardcore music's like back on the map or something, but for me that spirit and that energy has never gone away, and I don't think that it ever will. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that you can't push it down, you know. It's like it's always going to rise to the top, and it's always going to be like a beautiful platform or vessel for people to like have that voice, whether it's political or humanitarian or even just talking about, you know, think about like, I don't know, like negative approach or minor threat or something. Like, you know, these are just like purely songs about being like a kid and having a shit time. I think that's just as important as well, you know?
Yeah. You recently supported the Sex Pistols. How was that experience?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, you know, when you get that call up, you can't really say no. Do you know what I mean? Like, 15-year-old me would have been losing his mind at the thought of doing that. And it was still blowing my mind at my age now. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, it's just one of those things where it's like you're sort of doing it and you're in it and you just think, you know, it's just such a surreal thing. You know what I mean? Like it goes back to what we were talking about before about like this idea of like success or something. And it's just like, you know, I can't, you know, just even the seeing our name on the poster that time, I was just like, it's amazing, you know, and I'm stoked that we get to share, we got to share the stage with, you know, some legends of the game, you know.
Yeah. So, what's the goal every time you're about to hit the stage?
Look, we talked just before about like hardcore and stuff and the importance of like, you know, hardcore music and, you know, we've all come from that background, and I think that, like, you know, I love, and I always have loved just like stage, like, I just love performance, you know what I mean? And I just think that it's like, I love this idea that, like, time and time again, you get up, especially on tour, and you just show up and you like give it your all, whether it's for like a 20-minute set or a 45-minute set. I think it's just like, I love this idea of just like giving it everything you got, you know what I mean? And I feel like we've always done that and we'll always do that. And it's like, you know, in your face, but then it's also, there's moments where, like, you know, because I like this idea that some sets change, you know, like we've been on tour with some, you know, bands that have been doing it for a long time. They kind of have this kind of approach with it where they kind of come out and every night's the same and they've got the same kind of, you know, they might say a certain thing every night, you know, that's their kind of thing. But whereas for me, I approach it like every show is different, but I go about it with the same intent every night. And that's just to like give it everything I got, you know? And like, it's a performance at the end of the day. It's your time to like step out of yourself and become something else, or, you know, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do, you know?
Yeah. Do you have any pre-show routines?
I only started warming up within the last 2 years. I never used to warm up before that. And I used to have horrible, like, you know, we'd go on like a month-long tour and I'd have like horrible, you know, by the end of the tour I couldn't sing. Whereas now I've got warm-up vocals, warm-up approaches and warm downs, and like we generally just spend a bit of time together. Like we always do anyway. We love bloody hanging out with one another, and we can't, you know, as much as we probably annoy each other a lot of the time, we still love to hang out with one another before the show. But we just, I think being in a space together and just kind of like, not even necessarily talking about what you're going to do or anything. It's just about like getting everyone's energy and aligning yourselves before you go out and do this thing, you know? Sometimes it can be like the funnest part of the show is like that little moment before you go on stage together, you know, like you're all standing around. It's like, you know, you're about to be let out of the gates at like the horse races or something. You know what I mean? It's like this building energy. I actually had a mate when I was in my band, my hardcore band growing up, and he used to throw up before every gig because it was this like, the energy was just so, it was like, it was just building up so much and he couldn't hold on. So he'd just like throw up, you know? And I think that like, I love that aspect of like this tension that builds, you know, and then you go out there and it's just like, bang, it's on, you know?
Yeah. And what about after a show? Is it hard to come down?
Sometimes it can be really hard to come down. Like traditionally I'll get off stage and I'll just like sit down and like, you know, I have to kind of come back to ground zero again, you know? Because you just exert so much energy, you know what I mean? And like emotion sometimes, you know, like even emotionally you come out of it and you feel like, you know, you feel pretty like worn out from it. Which I find it really interesting. If anything, it's like, you know, yeah, I think it's an interesting ride emotionally sometimes, you know. And then coming off stage and you just kind of like, okay, how do I like navigate getting back into you know, because you know you've got to go get on the merch desk straight away almost, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's like that can be a really sharp contrast, you know what I mean, to step back out of it, you know. But I think it's all fun. It's all part of it, and it's all fun navigating that and jumping in and out of it and stuff, you know.
Yeah. So the album's out May 30. What's on then for the rest of the year?
So we're leaving in 2.5 weeks to go around the world. So we've got a month in America, and then we've got a couple of days off, and then we've got a month around Europe and the UK. And then we'll come back and do the Australian run of shows.
Yeah. So how much of the new album will you play overseas?
Well, we'll play. We're going to basically play the whole album, and then we're going to pepper in some of the old songs as well, because the album doesn't come out. The album comes out while we're on tour, so we're just a bit conscious of that, because you don't want to play. You know, I do like it when bands do just come out abrasively and play like every song that no one's heard of. I think it's hilarious, and like I don't have the balls to do it, but we'll still play a couple of the old songs for sure, just, you know, because you don't want to piss people off too much. But yeah, we're definitely going to be playing probably 90% of the new album for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, the album Chrome Dipped is out May 30. A very powerful album, and I'm finding I'm getting something different out of it every time I play it. It's
Great.
sort of
Well,
got those layers in there. So
yeah.
congratulations on that.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate your time.
Right. Cheers, mate.
You have a good day.